Small Gods is my favorite Discworld novel. I say my favorite and not the best because while my enjoyment of it is deeply profound, it is also deeply personal. I'm a real sucker for meditations on faith like Silence or The Young Pope, so Small Gods was always going to hold some appeal to me. What's ironic though is that I wasn't expecting to like it at all. See, from what little I had heard about it before reading, I thought that Small Gods was going to be one of those secular humanist, hey man, I don't really care what you believe in, bruh. We're just all human beings floating on this big river of life, man, sort of works. You know, the ones where the author grafts their modern secular Protestant ideas onto a medieval church-style system, while ignoring the simple fact that these are two wildly different beliefs and institutions. The kind that thinks that faith in God is the only thing a religion provides, while ignoring all the ways it can influence cultural identity, political movements, and an international community. The kind that thinks it's so terribly, terribly clever because it just read its first Richard Dawkins, and so it's got this whole religion thing figured out. In other words, a tiresome, worn-out, and cliché put-down of organized religion. But it's not that. Small Gods is something much more nuanced, subtle, and honestly witty, and something concerned with answering the question Terry Pratchett failed to answer in Witches Abroad. What do you do in this world if you want to make it better? So how does it answer that question? Well, first let's ask the question, what is Small Gods? Small Gods is the story of Brutha, a young novice of the Omnian faith, and his encounter with the great god Om, or at least a tortoise claiming to be Om. According to the maybe not Om, he was reduced to this pitiable state because the gods of Discworld need belief to survive, and Brutha seems to be the only fellow around who truly believes in Om anymore, instead of simply respecting the church structure and institutions. Being able to talk to haughty tortoises is not Brutha's only talent though. Thanks to his photographic memory, Brutha is recruited by the Omni Inquisition for a diplomatic mission to the kingdom of Ephebe. But Om smells a rat and tags along to see if he can keep Brutha out of trouble, a task that will test all his divine power. How does the world of Small Gods work? Small Gods introduces us to the kingdom of Omnia as well as the Omnian faith, both of which are based on the darkest chapters of theocratic oppression in history. However, Pratchett doesn't go the route of many instances of a corrupt or evil church in fantasy literature, where the church's belief system is founded on lies, everyone in it is an atheistic power broker or a willing servant of an evil entity, and our heroes must openly defy the system and maybe even kill the evil god of the church. In this story, Om is actually one of the heroes. He's a good guy. I mean, he's a decent guy. The point is, Pratchett can't go the route of making the Omnian faith all based on one big lie, or have it turn out that Om is actually evil, because in the Discworld, the gods are very real, and they live up on Cori Celesti. The people who start and run religions on Discworld can very easily check to see how truthful the divine they're worshipping is. More importantly though, in the Discworld and the real world, people have been more than willing to worship spiteful, capricious, and violent gods. Just look at how many war gods there have been throughout history. So instead of making the issue a church hierarchy that knows it is evil, Pratchett makes the issue of Small Gods the issue of Witches Abroad, a church hierarchy that believes it is good even when it is obviously not. The main villain of Small Gods is Deacon Vorbis, leader of the Omni Inquisition, and a very similar villain to Lilith Weatherwax. Both possess only minor titles but effectively run their respective nations. Both make it their mission to snuff out any and all deviations from what they deem the good and proper way things should be, and both have highly warped views of what that good and proper way is. Where Small Gods differs from Witches Abroad is in how it presents the opposition towards this corruption. In Witches Abroad, the opposition comes from its titular witches, and the message becomes how you should live your life regardless of what others say you ought to do. Small Gods doesn't have that option though because it's dealing with religion instead of fairy tales. And maybe you're one of those smart Alex who is now thinking, but aren't they the same thing? But they're not. Regardless of how historically accurate religious scripture is, the whole thing about religion is that people believe it. Far more than anyone believes in fairy tales. And nobody thinks that Cinderella was an actual person who really did all those things the story says she did, but we do know that figures like Buddha or Muhammad really existed. and many people around the world do believe that they did do all those things that the stories say they did. So, going the route of, hey man, you believe whatever you want to believe, I don't care, we're all just people, man, is a rather facetious, flippant way to deal with a serious real-world issue. As such, Pratchett sets up a different opposition to Omnia's religious fundamentalism through Omnian apostates, Ephebes' rational philosophers, and Lu Tzu, a mysterious monk who sweeps the citadel where Brother lives. Concerning the apostates, the increasing trend towards quashing rebellion and dissension in Omnia has gotten some people rather upset. Not the common people, they're convinced that this is simply how things are and accept it, but the military wing of the church responsible for all that quashing. They've witnessed and participated firsthand in the brutal oppression of the Omnian Church, and so they think the time is ripe for a revolution, where Vorbis may at last be slain and the common people freed, to usher in a new age of peace and prosperity. However, as Brotha soon learns, these religious soldiers are still soldiers, organized around killing and fighting instead of governing, and conditioned to quash any rebellion and dissension. Even if they realize that Vorbis is evil, a successful rebellion against him will most likely result in just a change of leadership, not a change in direction. The target of the military may change, but its methods and structure will remain, leading to the cycle of evil continuing. Ephebe, as you may remember from previous books, is the Discworld's equivalent of ancient Greece. And just like any good ancient Greek equivalent, the place is crawling with philosophers. When Brotha and Om go to Ephebe as part of Vorbis' cunning plan, they run into these philosophers, and at first their rational approach towards life, the universe, and everything seems like a perfect alternative towards the religious fundamentalism of Omnia. Instead of blind dogma, Ephebian philosophers rely on logic and reason, not letting things like superstition or emotion get in the way of their rationality. At least, that's what they say. But the more time Brotha spends with these philosophers, the more apparent it becomes that their logic and reason aren't as objective as they claim. They may use a different terminology and call upon a different higher power, but their ultimate effect is still much the same, convincing people that whatever they're doing is the right thing to do. The only way a society can even have people with enough leisure time to devote themselves to discovering higher truths is if they have a workforce just as disposable and oppressed as Omnia's devoted. And Ephebe's philosophy may operate under different premises than Omnia's dogma, but it still leads to the cycle of evil continuing. So that just leaves Lu Tzu. What does he have to say? Here's the main issue with the message, believe whatever you want to believe. You can't make a proper religion if you don't lay out certain ground rules and certain things it's not okay to do. Okay, fine, you say, but that's just religion. You can live your life without believing in God. And that's true, but even if you don't believe in God, you have to believe in something. Everyone believes in something. Maybe not God, but some higher truth or idea of good. You, as a moral person, must have some guideline of morality you use to determine whether your actions are moral or immoral. And even if that's not a religion, it's a belief. And the way human beings make societies or communities comes from laying down communal rules, establishing communal beliefs. I think this is somewhat difficult for us Americans to understand because there is a separation of church and state here. You can live your life as an American without ever engaging in a religious institution. But we do engage in secular state institutions, and on the seals of all these institutions are calls to truth, justice, honor, integrity, beliefs. We live in a society, and as such, we possess beliefs as to what rules that society should have, what ideals its institutions should reflect. Going the route of, we're all just humans on this big river of life, man, is a disengagement from that society. Even the belief that church and state should be separated operates under the assumption that the state possesses some power above humanity, a divinity, if you will, and that whatever god you worship should come second to your belief in that state power. But all too often, institutions, whether they be in church or state, fall prey to corruption, become the instruments of oppression, commit evil while believing they do good. So the question stands, what do you do? And in Small Gods, Terry Pratchett gives the answer. Be angry. Like I said, if human beings want anything done, they need to organize. And they organize themselves around beliefs. If these beliefs get big and well-defined enough, we give them labels, and they become movements. These movements change the institutions of society and build new institutions in their place. But all too often, these revolutions only end up repeating things. The new regime may make different mistakes for different reasons, but the end result is still the oppression and violence that led to the old regime being overthrown. So what do you do? Well, if you joined a movement, it's because you wanted something. Maybe you wanted the oppressors to leave you alone. Maybe you wanted roads to be built and children in schools. Maybe you wanted new ideas to no longer be taboo in polite society. The point is, you joined because you thought that this movement was the best bet to make this desire manifest. And the reason so many new regimes fall into the same patterns as their predecessors is that members of the revolutionary movement all too often place their loyalty in the movement above all else. The movement is good, therefore all it does is good. But as we know from Lilith and Vorbis, people who use the movement to justify their evil, this is simply not the case. And even well-meaning people like Magrat or Brutha can maintain unjust systems because they uncritically believe in their respective movements. So what do? You find the source of your desire, the anger at injustice and tyranny, and you keep it alive even after the old regime is snuffed out. You keep your eyes not on the supposed cause, but the desired effect, and wield that anger not simply against the old regime, but any regime that does not give you the things you sought with your movement. Don't let the anger run rampant. Don't let it turn to chaos. Don't let it consume you, but sustain you. Keep it focused on your desired goals and constantly work towards those goals. Brutha is the chosen one of Om, because he alone truly believes in Om. And yet Om's time as a tortoise changes him, while Brutha's belief reshapes him. Even upon reclaiming his divinity, Om cannot go back to how he was before, because Brutha will not allow the cycle to repeat. Through Om, Brutha learns to be angry, and as the chosen one, he will maintain this anger and change the Omnian Church into something better. This is still not a fairy tale ending. Brutha's dream will take a lifetime of work, and when that lifetime is over, new people and new corruptions will come to restart the cycle of evil. But Brutha will leave his mark on the Discworld, and new people will come to see that his mark remains. As for us, sadly, we don't have an objective divinity living up on a mountain somewhere. Our morality is still changing and subjective. And if these last two books have taught us anything, it's that all these lessons of anger and idealism can be easily appropriated to justify evil. But that anger, that constant striving for something better in this world, it's what gives this world sense and meaning. It's what keeps humanity from falling into extinction. It's what we all need. And I hope, as our Earth marches closer and closer towards the apocalypse, that it can save us. Final verdict. We like to think that religious organizations are static and unchanging, but that's not true. I mean, since its foundation, the Catholic Church alone has undergone 21 ecumenical councils, and that's to say nothing of councils organized by offshoots and schism churches, or indeed non-Christian religions in general. The point is, at the end of the day, organized religion is a system, and systems survive by adapting, and by people being angry enough to force that adaptation. This is why I fell in love with Small Gods, why it stands above so many other fantasy treatises on religion, why I give it a 10 out of 10. In this cruel, chaotic world, it is far too easy to give into despair. But when I start to fall, I remember what Terry Pratchett taught me. stay angry. In the meantime, I'm Marco Keane, signing off, and I hope you liked this video. If you did, and you'd like to see me make more, please leave a like or comment down below, share my video via Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or other means, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you all, and I will see you in the next one.